We are gonna learn not null constraint in SQL. So you might have seen in different applications or while filling some kind of forms, you might have seen that there are mandatory fields there whose value cannot be null. Or if you fill up a form and there are mandatory fields and you kept it blank, it will not be submitted. That means it don't allow blank values or null values there. It should have some kind of value. So in the backend, there it defines not null constraint, right? So we see there is a null column while we describe a table that might say either yes or no. So as of now, let's use our database, maybe dating app, right? Let me use it. Now let's create one table there. Create table, maybe users we can create here. We have create table users and we have some columns. Let's say user name with varchar maybe 50 and email maybe varchar 100, right? Let me try executing it. It will create me a table, right? If I try refresh it here, one table will be created. Now let me just try to describe this table first. If you see that these fields are there and we have null values, it is defined as yes. That means it accepts the null value. So if I try to insert into users, the fields are username and email values. Let's try to insert only one value as of now, user1, comma, user1 at the rate abc.com, terminate, right? If I try to execute it and shall I try to select this from users, what will happen? It will show you the table with one user. Now if I try to again insert some value, let me try to insert only email as of now. User to at the rate abc.com. So what will happen? Name will not be inserted, only email will be inserted. And let me try to again show you the results here. The username is null. So if you try to sign up somewhere, your username is mandatory field there, right? So this username shouldn't be null. So null is a value in MySQL, that means no value. So when this value is null, it means that for that column, null value is permitted. It means the lack of a value for a given row. It basically means if we see null set to yes, that column can be empty for a row. In other words, the value is unknown. It's important to know that value null does not mean zero. Zero is a number and it is a value. Null means there is no information, there is no value at all. Let's try to, we have inserted this way and we have seen null here. There could be some situation that might have different columns that aren't always required. that could be empty, but a lot of times we want to require values to be present in the column, meaning you cannot have null. So that's the example we discussed. Username cannot be null somewhere, right? Example, we have inserted, let's try to insert one more time here. Insert into users. We are not defining any value over here, right? If I try to insert it, it is successful, and let me just try to show you the values. Now it has inserted both null, right? This results in a valid row. This is a valid row, but I don't think we want our table to permit this. This is where we can add a constraint in, which is called as not null. We can edit a table using alter. We will be learning that in future classes, but let's make a newer table as of now, right? uh, at the last, maybe create table users1, users1, where we will be defining the columns as username, again the same columns, varchar 50, and email with varchar as 50, maybe 100 now, and closing it. Let me try to execute it. But here, what we will defining without, before executing, I will be defining my username as not null, right? And email would also be not null, because for authentication we will be requiring an email or phone number. So phone number field is not there, so for authentication what we will need is email in practical scenarios, right? So let me try creating it now. Let's insert something here. I will try to insert first this value again here, maybe in users1, execute. Unknown column username. Okay, sorry. This is the username here. Let's try to execute it. And we will be using select star statement from users1, and we have this value. But if now let me try to insert with null value. Let's say here I don't define any value. Let's say null. What will happen? It says error, column username cannot be null. It will not be inserted. Now let's try to give this statement here with users1 table. Again, what will happen? We are defining null values here, right? What will happen? Again, it will say field username does not have a default value, meaning, so either it should be some value, or we should provide some default value. So if we don't provide any value here, that default value will be considered. So in case of not null, this is the error you might see while filling the forms when you leave the mandatory field as null. So this is the this column cannot be null. So here we require null constraints, where we have fields which require some value mandatorily, right? So if any user doesn't define any kind of value there, they should have some kind of default value, right? So that default value, how do we will be defining, we will be covering in the next tutorials. So this is a kind of a mandatory constraints which you should be known as a data engineer or a data analyst or SQL developer.